Now we have a real treat. Dame Ellen MacArthur is going to be joining us on stage. Oh, there we go. Thanks so much for joining us. So we have a bigger audience for this, not just the audience in the room, but we're opening this conversation up to an audience on Facebook Live, which is very exciting. Millions of people. And we look forward to having their questions as well as questions from this room. So you've accomplished a lot in your life. You circled the globe in record time, solo sailing, just under 15 days.
Longer than that, actually. 71 days.
71 days. Well, we'll have to correct Wikipedia then, the reference that I saw. But now you've become a leader of the circular economy movement. So if we could start, some people are familiar with what that means, but if you could just give us your explanation of that would be great.
Well, the best way to describe a circular economy is to look at our current economy today, which is predominantly linear. Therefore, we take a material out of the ground, we make something out of it, and then the end of the life of that product, a proportion of that material gets thrown away. Within a circular economy, from the outset, you design the economy so that it's restorative and regenerative. You design the economy so that products, components, and the materials within them can cycle at their highest value and utility at all times. So not just the materials within the product, but the product itself staying at a higher value, which is what happens when we shift from products of sale to products of service.
Right. And tell us the story about how you got interested in this.
Well, first of all, in working around the circular economy or global economics was the last thing I ever thought I would do. You know, my goal from the age of a 4-year-old child was to sail around the world. It's all I wanted to do, and everything in my life pointed to that goal. And I saved my school dinner money at school every single day from the age of 8 right through to 17 when I left school to buy my first boat. Everything was, how do I get closer to that goal? And I had the most amazing 8 years of professional racing. I first sailed around Britain when I was 18 years old on my own, my first ever trip. And then quickly did transatlantics, and then found a sponsor to do a round the world race called the Vendée Globe, which I finished second in, and then 4 years later set off to try to be the fastest person to sail non-stop around the world. And I was living a dream. I mean, it was everything I'd ever wanted to do. I never, ever thought I would stop. But if you set sail on a boat around the world, you begin to think differently. You know, if I said to you all now, go off into Paris and find everything that you need for your survival for the next 3 months, that's what we do. That's everything. That's food, that's medical equipment, that's spares for the generator, spare hard drives for the computer, everything. Because, when you leave, you are 2,500 miles away from the nearest town in the Southern Ocean. If you need help to get to you because you break a leg or break the boat, it's 5 days for a ship to get to you, and then 5 days for that ship to get you back to a hospital. So you really are isolated, and there's no one else down there. In fact, the closest people to you are those manning the European Space Station above. Obviously not much help when you're on a boat.
Yeah.
But you think in a very different way, and you manage what you have on the boat in a very different way. And what I never understood when I was doing those races until the finish line of the second round the world was what an understanding those journeys give you of what finite means. Because what you have on that boat is all you have. There is no more. And I'd never translated that to anything outside of sailing. Sailing was my life. I thought I was going to do that for the rest of it. And then suddenly I realized our global economy is no different. It's virtually entirely reliant on resources we have once in the history of humanity, and yet we're using them up faster and faster. That curve is going exponentially up. And I guess I asked myself the question, so if this exponential increase in the use of resources, not just oil and gas, but also metals, plastics, these resources, if it's going up, then how does that figure for the future of the economy of humanity? And I just tried to get under the skin of so what works then? What will actually work? Because linear, this increasing use of resources doesn't work. Even if you make it more efficient, it doesn't work because we have increasing population and that increasing use of them.
Yeah. And as you've been studying and leading this movement, is there a case study that you point to, something very specific of this company, or in this instance is a good example of how it should work?
Well, it's a great story. Very early on in the life of the foundation, in Holland, I met a Dutch chief executive. He ran an industrial carpet tile business, and he hadn't said to his entire workforce, knowing that oil prices at that point were rising very steeply, and there were challenges around resources. He didn't say, I want to make a more efficient carpet tile. He said, I want to redesign the system. I want to build a carpet tile that's made to be made again. I'd rather not sell it. I want to lease it because I want to guarantee we get it back. because we're going to build a factory that will be able to disassemble that carpet tile, recover the materials, the base will get melted down and turned into the base of the next carpet, the yarn will get sent off to the yarn suppliers, depolymerized, repolymerized, and turned into the yarn of the next carpet, and his goal was to do that using entirely renewable energy by 2025. It's a very different message. Growth in that sphere is fantastic because your business model is something which is restorative and regenerative. You're recovering your materials. Now that's carpet tile, but you could do the same with a car or a watch or a phone or a table. If you design for a system,
Right.
then you design an entirely different product and you think in a different way. And the circular economy is a lens through which you view the entire economy in a different way. You think in a different way as a designer. You think in a different way as a finance director. You think in a different way in marketing because you're not trying to sell a washing machine any longer. You're trying to provide a wash, and that person would pay per wash. So it's a very different scenario.
Right. But there's such a strong sense among consumers of, got to have the new thing. If there's a new version of whatever, that must be better. So even if you set up the system, there's the speed of the system, there's the demand from consumers. Are those at odds?
I don't think they are at odds, actually. I mean, there are many things in the economy that are out there today. Look at Rolls-Royce power by the hour. If you're an airline company, you generally don't own your engines. You pay for an hour of airtime. Rolls-Royce maintains them. They own them. They know exactly how to look after that engine. Some of those engines are 20, 30 years old, probably, parts of them, but they're still in the air and they're maintained specifically. That's an easy circular economy journey. It gets more complicated when you have faster evolving technologies. Take Apple and the iPhone. We work with them with our C100 program. And you could say, well, actually, with technology, young people, they want the latest one every 6 months. Now, the fault in the system is that when you buy an iPhone, normally you own it. So when the new one comes out, what do you do with your old one? And now there are more companies set up where you can resell your phones, so they go back into the system. But we also see Apple creating a tariff in the US or almost like a subscription in the US, where every year you get a new phone, or every 6 months you get a new phone. That provides the circle of the phone to go back to Apple. Now they know what's in it. They know how to get the materials out. They know the components that are valuable. An iPhone has more value than the components within it, but the components within it have more value than the materials within it. Right. And what we want is the latest product every 6 months. If that phone then goes back into the system and the components and the materials can be valorized, be it melted down into metals, recovering rare earth metals, or the components reused into a different phone, then actually that system then flows, even with fast refreshing technology.
Right. And when you lay it out, it makes so much sense, and there is a growing movement, but still not a lot of people are on board. I mean, when you talk to companies about this, what is slowing this? What are the difficult conversations you have about this where people kind of give you a stare that they don't really get it or it doesn't quite make sense for their business model?
I mean, being perfectly honest, we don't get a lot of those stares. We work with hundreds of businesses all over the world now. We work with universities, cities, regions. We have phenomenal conversations. And I think the reason for that is that circular economy is about opportunity. We've produced 6 reports now looking at the economic rationale for a circular economy, and it's into trillions of US dollars, a little bit like the comment just now in the last panel. Actually, this makes more money. We've proved that. We've worked with McKinsey as our knowledge partner. There's trillions of US dollars out there for the taking. That brings people in. So there's that the stare isn't there because there's something to move towards which creates more value, which is restorative and regenerative. The challenge is putting that into practice. Because in the Western world, we've built a linear economy. We had the Industrial Revolution. It lifted billions of people out of poverty today and worked very well. But we now know it's beginning to bump up against its limits. We know that it's challenged. Now, if you're trying to shift your entire business from being linear to circular, we have the chief executives, ear, and they fully know where they're going, and they are stating, we want to make this happen. In many cases, you still have to change the entire system. So it's not a case of talking to the design department and saying we want to design a circular product. That's one element. But it's only one element because unless you market it differently, unless you have a reverse logistics system set up, so perhaps you provide it as a product of service rather than selling it, then you haven't created that system that enables the product to come back in or wherever it goes, even if it's a third party. You need to build that system whereby the product can really be valorized. And what's been really interesting is through the economic studies, we found that in the case of a washing machine, for example, it's not one of the most high-tech of products, although I'm sure washing machine manufacturers would argue that's not the case. But a washing machine, currently they're only designed in Europe to do about 2,000 washes, and that will cost us 27 cents a wash. When you look at a circular economy machine, that would be typically your high-end machine of today. That's designed to do about 10,000 washes. Now, that will cost you more to buy, therefore most people don't buy that machine, despite the fact economically it's cheaper to have that over the lifetime of the product. Within a circular economy, you would pay per wash. So you wouldn't pay tax when you buy the machine. You wouldn't own all the materials within the machine when you have it in your house, as we all do. You know, I own all the materials in my washing machine. I don't want them. When it breaks, I don't take it apart and recover them and, you know, put the metal and the concrete and the technology in the garage. I don't want that. I just want clean clothes. And then when I throw it away, I pay landfill tax. Within a circular economy, you would basically pay per wash. So the manufacturer would supply the machine. They would make sure it works, they would manufacture it, they would remanufacture it if it's necessary. You could have different tariffs for different qualities of machines, but basically they will look after that machine in your home and you get a better deal, 12 rather than 27 cents a wash, and they don't have to continue to buy new raw materials to create growth. Because in the linear system, you know, every washing machine manufacturer has to build a machine that breaks, else they saturate the market, and they need more raw materials every time they make a machine. And this basically decouples that growth from the resource constraints.
Right, that's great. Do we have questions from Facebook? We're going to go to the audience here. Questions for Ellen? Here we go.
What is your opinion on like the public actually taking action and trying to, for example, fix broken devices? I mean, there's all these maker spaces and repair spaces popping up in major cities around the world, and it's an entire movement on its own. And I feel it could fit quite well into your vision of a circular economy. Although, I mean, granted, if it's a product as a service, the manufacturer's not going to be happy if you taking it apart. But how could you perhaps see some sort of collaboration with that other movement?
Yeah, when we talk about the system, it could be one company in that system, or there could be many. There could be many suppliers. There could be the reprocessors of the products themselves at the end of the chain to recover the materials. There could be many players. I mean, when you talk about keeping products, components, and the materials within them at their highest value and utility at all times, I mean, the makers movement absolutely does that. I mean, that's at the heart of it. We work with iFixit, for example, in our C100 network. That, you know, understanding how those products, what's in them, how they're made, it's fascinating. And certainly with our education work, when you work with young people and they start to see there's a different way of looking at the economy and things could be designed in a different way and work in a different way. You know, we often do tear down labs with them and we take stuff apart, and they find that absolutely fascinating, you know, as do the companies. So there'll be many, many elements to a circular economy. Some will be closed systems, some will be open systems, but ultimately, you know, we all know that phone is really valuable when it's fixed, but it's not very valuable when it's broken. So getting it back into that system is something which we all know is very valuable. You know, however fast the refresh of technology, you know, there will become a point where it's no longer the right technology. It may go to a different market. It may get broken down into its components, or the materials may be recovered. But keeping it up there and functioning is definitely first priority.
Other questions? In the back, please. Thank you.
Hi there, I'm Leslie Rudd from the Sustainable Energy Association. I was interested in when you were talking about the washing machine, because we're a trade association and our members sell a range of products, but things like heating products is one of them. And I could see how you might actually sell heat rather than a heating system, and you might that way be able to sell a more expensive heating system, which was over time more valuable, more efficient. But one of the other products that we and my members sell is energy efficiency. So things like loft insulation, cavity wall insulation, things like that. And people don't tend to buy that because that's almost like selling less energy. It's not something like heat that they buy. The only thing I can think of is, would they be buying a warm home or a comfort or something? I'm just wondering how energy efficiency could fit in.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Actually, one of the partners that we work with works with another of our partners, Philips. So this is a company in the Netherlands, and they actually, it's not home solutions, but it's office solutions. So if you work with a company, they're called Turn2, you pay for office space, but all the furniture within that office is designed for circular economy. So the carpet is designed for disassembly, the tables are designed for circular economy, it's steel case, the lighting is Philips lighting, and rather than buy the lighting, you pay to have 400 lumens at desk height as part of your contract. Philips provide that lighting. Philips pay their own electricity bill, and therefore when they have more efficient technology, they will automatically change it out because they're paying the bill. So that incentivizes energy efficiency measures to come into place, because actually it's the manufacturer of that product who has something more efficient that will benefit, as well as obviously the broader economy. So there are incentives that we see, but it's very early stage. And I think you think about the question about the makers movement and people understanding the circular economy. I don't know if people even need to know what a circular economy is. It just, if there's a tariff that makes more sense, if you get a better product for less money, then you do it. And it's the same point about, that's been made earlier on today. Actually, if there's a better system out there that just works, you'll do it, whatever it's called. It doesn't need a name, it will just happen. And, we've seen this with Uber. I mean, Uber keeps cars at a much higher utility at all times. Airbnb keeps buildings at a much higher utility at all times. And, we did a big study which came out last year in Europe, looking at the digital revolution and how that affects the growth within the economy. And we looked at Europe and we said, take the built environment, mobility and food systems, and look at the growth from the digital revolution that we're seeing, and then apply a circular lens to that. And we found growth through the digital revolution was 900 billion. But the moment you apply a circular lens, that 900 billion of growth for Europe turns into 1.8 trillion. So it's applying that lens to maximize the value, but also to build a restorative and regenerative system.
Oh, that's great. And we do have a question from Facebook. Liz, could you share
we've
it?
got a couple thousand people tuning in right now from around the world to this, to what you all are saying, and a question from Ada Francis Madriz Castillo, who would love it if you could just expand a little bit on whether there is any industry already in the system. If you could give an example.
There are many examples. I mean, there's examples. For example, I talked about Rolls-Royce, power by the hour. Another example would be Renault. So Renault has several circular economy processes. We've worked with them since the beginning of the foundation. They were one of our founding partners. They have, for example, with a fleet of electric vehicles, when you buy your electric vehicle, you don't buy the battery. You lease the battery, which guarantees the battery to be at 75% or capacity. 75% capacity or more for the life that you have the vehicle. So they guarantee the battery for that lease. They also have a remanufacturing plant just outside Paris here, where they take broken engines, gearboxes and fuel pumps from right across the Renault network. They come in, on pallets as rusty engines. They get disassembled, ultrasonically cleaned, reassembled into engines, gearboxes and fuel pumps, and they leave the factory with the same warranty as a new one, in a box saying genuine Renault parts. Obviously we pay less because it's a remanufactured engine. Yeah. But what's fascinating is that engine has the same warranty as a new one, yet it has 80% less energy in it and 80% less material in it. So there's an example of circular economy, but you massively save on energy when you start to valorize that engine to its highest level. You could just crush it down and turn it into steel, which most companies do, or most scrapyards do. But then you are losing the value of that engine. It's much more valuable. It has much more energy embedded within it when it's in the form of an engine. So, that's not saying that same engine should exist for 100 years, but the amount more value we could get out of the system if we could remanufacture to a higher level. And once you switch to a product of service and you're using Zipcar within a city, you just want it to work. It's a vehicle you want to work. So however you can maintain that vehicle working at the best of its capacity, then that would be a good thing. And if you remanufacture, then suddenly you have a vehicle that's got 80% less energy and material savings within it.
That's great. Liz, another question from Facebook?
Question on the New York Times Facebook Live page from Riju Bhattacharya. I hope I pronounced that correctly. He asks, don't you think a circular economy poses more limitations on the manufacturers?
We've certainly not had that feedback. I mean, when we work with the designers, we work with IDEO around designing for a circular economy, and we work with thousands of young people all over the world, both 14 to 19 through International Baccalaureate, through the universities that we work with around design, engineering and business specifically, and with businesses all over the world, huge businesses and also small emerging innovators. And we see that actually once you apply a circular lens, it's about innovation, creativity and rethinking the system, and it opens up people's minds. It's not something that closes minds. There's a great story from a young person in the very early years of the foundation 6 years ago who had been working with trialing some of educational material. And he went up to his teacher and he said, sir, when I did my exams age 16, I love design and technology, which was his subject. But I couldn't think of anything to design. Everything's been done. But now I've learned about circular economy. Everything I see, I want to redesign. And I would say, from a manufacturing perspective, that opens up many, many possibilities.
Yeah. But from here in the conference, ma'am.
Ulrike Weising from DNVGL. We work a lot on behavior change and behavior change linked to energy efficiency. Take the example that you gave with Philips in the office space where you rent lumens instead of paying for electricity. Do you see that there's a risk of removing the incentives for behavior change and the energy efficiency that can come from that through these business models that provides the service rather than you paying for your use or you're paying for your equipment?
I think what's interesting with that scenario is that, automation, we in our office, we have lights that come on when you're there and they go out when you're not. I mean, that saves massive amounts of energy. We've all left lights on. We do it in our homes. You leave a light on, you think, oh, I left that light on. I think there are things that you can do which minimize the risk of those lights being left on for sure. So I think there are things that can be done to help. I think the fact that Philips is incentivized in this case to change the lighting out to something that's more efficient because they pay the bill, and actually they know what's in the products, they can get the materials back, I think that's a very positive incentive. So I think a lot of barriers can begin to be broken down through automation. Obviously, we all have individual lives, we all do different things. I think, young people within education, they do learn to be careful with the resources. We have to be incredibly careful with resources we have because they're limited. But I think the risk is that if the message is only behavioural change and not, rethinking, redesigning, building a future that can function in the long term, which we see with circular economy, if it's only that behavioural change, then young people grow up thinking, well, what can I do then? Because everything I do is negative. If I travel here, that's a bad thing. If I use this, it's a bad thing. The reality is that the system within which we live is predominantly linear. Not through anyone's fault, it's a result of the Industrial Revolution. That can never work in the long term. Once you start to build a circular system, then you start to build a restorative and regenerative system, which is all about opportunity and creativity and rethinking. But the system changes for the individual. We have a huge piece of work we're doing at the moment on plastics, looking at taking one material stream in the global economy, which is plastic packaging, 78 million tons a year, and trying to basically shift the entire conversation around plastic packaging globally by pulling all the stakeholders together with McKinsey, the World Economic Forum, and many stakeholders, some of who have been at this conference today, to say, how do we shift the system of plastic packaging so that a greater amount than 2% globally actually gets recycled at the same level? It's a tiny percentage when we think actually in many countries we're quite good at recycling. But the individual can't do that because the system doesn't work. The plastics aren't designed to sit within a system. Unless you change the system, then you don't change the energy demand and you don't change the material flow. So there is the behavioural change, absolutely, but there's also the system change that has to go with it to enable us to build a restorative and regenerative economy. Because just buying ourselves time and being a little bit more careful with what we have doesn't change the linearity. It slows down the demise a bit of what we have, or the decrease, but it doesn't change the system, and I think that's essential.
That's great. One more from Facebook.
Yeah, an interesting one from Taylor Caitlin, who's asking how many jobs could be created recovering the products by the manufacturer to be refurbished and reassigned? Is that even knowable?
Well, it's interesting. When we did the European study last year, which was the one looking at the digital revolution for Europe, we did a lot of work with the IZA, which is the leading employment economics organization based in Germany. And we looked at the digital revolution, we looked at the circular lens, and we looked at employment in parallel. And we felt as a result of the study that we did, and we did 150 expert interviews with academia, with businesses to understand, the real change, we felt that there would be an increase in employment. I mean, I can't talk about it in more detail, but broadly speaking, we felt there would be an increase in employment. There would maybe be a slight decrease in the primary employment, but actually from the service industry and the remanufacturing industry, there would be an increase. And the embedded energy benefits were huge. In that report, we looked at the 2030 and 2050 carbon savings, and we found that it was 48% by 2030 through applying the circular lens to Europe, and it was over 80% by 2050. So there's huge changes.
That's great. Two final quick questions. When you were sailing around the world, did you see a lot of plastic and garbage in the ocean?
Not really. No, I was where the plastics tend to collect in the ocean gyres. So they flow with the currents and they end up in the Pacific, within these gyres where you have massive build-ups. Where I was, there's very strong currents in the Southern Ocean. So I actually saw very little at sea. My interest in this didn't come from what I saw on the ocean. It came from what I felt on the ocean, which was I understand what finite means. And finite translated for me to the global economy.
Yeah. And so the very last question, are you still sailing?
I do still sail. Try and stop me, but not like before. You know, before I was at sea 6 months of every year at least.
So what's a long trip these days for you?
A long trip, a few hours.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's great.
But you know, the sailing was amazing, and you know, as I said, I never ever thought I would stop it. I thought I'd be doing that for the rest of my life. And then the moment I started to understand, you know, resources and the finite nature of resources, and getting into this world that I knew absolutely nothing about, you know, I had no background in economics whatsoever, but I just wanted to get kind of under the skin of what works then. You know, if the linear economy doesn't work, what works then? You know, and building the foundation, it's been the most amazing thing I've ever done. We have nearly 100 people working there. We have the most incredible teams, 23 different nationalities, and you know, it's the most amazing and the most important thing I've ever done. And it's you know, it's a different challenge. No, it's not trying to get a boat around the world as fast as you possibly can, but it's an absolutely awesome one.
Yeah, it's a powerful story. Thank you so much. Please join me thanking Ellen MacArthur. So I have some good news. Cocktails right next door, and also cartoons from Patrick Chapat to end the evening. And we will see you all tomorrow morning for more great conversations. Thank you.